Hi, everybody. I have the absolute privilege and blessing of sitting here with the amazing Brittany Brown. She is a dynamic speaker and a Christian apologist, and she has been gracious enough to have a conversation with me. And so thank you so much. So the first question I have for you is, how old were you when you decided to turn and put your trust in Jesus, confess your sins, ask for forgiveness, and follow him?
That's a tricky question. I was probably 22 when I first cried out to God and said, hey, come into my life, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't until I turned 23, and I'll never forget it. It was a May. And that was the moment I knew when, you start putting some stuff aside, suddenly stuff that you've been doing all this time, you don't have an inclination to do, and that's when I knew. I was like, oh, okay, at 23, that's when I think I really started, yeah.
That's when you knew. And why do you believe the historical record of the New Testament? In other words, why are you a Christian? Why do you believe what you believe?
Well, I believe what I believe because it's verifiable. It's verifiable, and I had an amazing experience with God. It's too long to tell in this little interview here, but the New Testament is reliable considering the manuscript evidence that we have. We have an insurmountable amount of evidence that appeals to manuscripts. There's no other book in history or in antiquity, for that matter, that has even as close as many manuscripts that we have. We have, I think the second best is maybe Homer's Iliad, and it pales in comparison. We have archaeology that, again, which I said in my talk just now, it has never disproven anything in the Bible, but confirmed it. House of David inscriptions, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Pilate inscriptions, the places and artifacts that we found from these excavation teams that proved the historical reliability of the Bible, not to mention the prophecies fulfilled. I mean, the people, no man can predict the prophecies of the Bible that predict kings centuries before they came into their ruling. I mean, and then the science that, a lot of people say that, science, it contradicts, or Christianity contradicts science. No, it doesn't. The science is just a little behind. With
Science is the study of God's knowledge, right? How he created and designed everything.
Yeah, I mean, they'll say, like, scientists thought, the earth is flat. The Bible was like, no, it's round. And science now, upon technological advances, know that the earth is round. Like, it's things like that, like, air doesn't have weight. But no, it does. And then science is like, it does. Once, and the Bible was saying this years ago. So I'm a Christian because it's true. That was a long way of me saying it's true.
I love it. What are some of the challenges that you face, though? And I suspect you don't face too many when sharing your faith, because you're bold. I mean, and I love that.
Bold.
You are bold, and I love it. And I love your authenticity.
Thanks, Cathryn. I would say the challenges that I face, interesting. The biggest challenges I face are within my own family.
Not surprising.
That's the hard one. It's people that you don't know. I'm never going to see them again. I present the information with love and grace and civility, but my family, they know me. They know my good side, my bad side when I'm not on the stage. Yeah. And sometimes if I'm not operating out of love, which is something I've been learning a lot recently, when I don't show my family members love because there's pain and a lot of hurt behind a lot of my family members, it makes them not want to receive what I have to say, because I know how you act towards me. You're not that, you know what I mean? And so I know that it's, for me, it's just operating more out of love. And so that's the challenge that I face. I want to make sure that when I present information to my family members, that, you ever heard the thing, Cathryn, there's 5 gospels, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and then the Christian faith, like your walk. I want to make sure that 5th one, so to speak, my walk is consistent with my information that I'm sharing. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So.
And I think that's a great point. I think probably a lot of Christians share that same struggle, especially people who come to faith, later on in their life, because you do have kind of a track record, right? God's very forgiving, and sometimes people, just aren't.
Yeah.
So.
And I want to clarify that because I didn't really finish that quote, but there's 4 Gospels, we know that. But people say that there's 5. It's Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and then the Christian walk. And they say that most people don't read the first 4. And that's why it's important that we make sure that we live what it is that we're trying to teach people.
That is so true. That is so true. So do you think there's ever a wrong way for Christians to share our faith?
I would say it probably just goes back to just not having love. 1 Peter 3:15 tells us to be prepared to give a defense for the faith and the hope that we have, yet with gentleness and reverence. And I think that last part is really important. You can beat people over the head with the Bible all you want, but make sure that you have gentleness and reverence and just you love them, not God is fire and brimstone. Okay, that's true.
Right.
But there's a way that you can convey that in love.
Right.
And I feel like once the person knows that you care for them, it's like with the doctor. Like if the doctor just throws them out medicine, just take this sick stuff and call me later. Oh, okay, you're not that nice. But if the doctor says, you know what, I want you to take this, call me. I want to know how this works for you. It's like, oh, they care about me. I'm more receptive. You know what I mean? So
that's a brilliant analogy. Talk a little bit about the difference between evangelism and apologetics and how they go hand in hand. So this is the crux of my ministry.
You know what? I've never been asked that before. And maybe I need to just, honestly, I'm a lover of truth. Honestly, I would probably need to do more research in what, evangelism entails, because I understand that evangelism is, you go out and you profess the gospel, and you may go over to this place, you make, missions or something, and that's how you profess the faith. Apologetics is essentially the same thing. It's hard for me to find a difference. The only emphasis I would say in apologetics is it's the defense of the faith. It's not just, hey, it's giving the gospel, but it's giving sound logic and reason to why you believe what you believe. So we answer the hard questions, where evangelists will probably go out and, say, hey, Jesus is the only way, and, give your life to him. We're saying Jesus is the only way, and this is why. Let me show you the evidence behind it.
Right.
And so,
Right.
yeah. But I think they would go hand in hand, to be honest.
Yes. And as a 6-year-old Christian, I find, there are apologists who can defend the faith, and I've heard, a couple say, well, I could convince people God exists without talking about Jesus or the Bible, and it's like, wow, that seems kind of weird.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, an evangelist will sit and share scripture off their heart, like it's their job. And then someone says, yeah, but I don't trust the book you're pulling, and then they don't know what to say.
Yeah, and that's where.
So it kind of, it's like circular, right?
Yeah.
You share your faith, you defend your faith, and then you minister to that person.
Yeah, and it's, appealing to the Bible to someone who doesn't believe the Bible is right, that's where you have to appeal the external evidence. You have to use extra biblical things, and that's where we have the manuscript, the archaeology, the prophecy, the science. I mean, we have so many things that we can, even just people who they weren't even Christians, like, who is it? Nero, like, people who were burning Christians and doing all these, they still said, yeah, that's some weird stuff going over there. I think that Jesus guy is actually God. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they have historical records that will prove people who weren't Christians, who were completely against the faith, and that's not in the Bible. These are just historical records. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. And the last question is, what advice would you give to someone who has just recently started studying apologetics?
Someone who recently just started studying apologetics.
Or someone thinking about, getting into the study.
Recently studying, I would tell someone, don't forget the Bible. A lot of times we get so, like, read this textbook and read this, and they're great works. Like, they're so important. But I remember in seminary, sometimes I would forget, and God would remind me, have you spent any time in my word? Like, I know that you're reading about Josephus and Nero, okay, that's great. Right. Spend time with me. Right. And sometimes it's weird, you will think because you're reading about so much stuff that deals with God, that's spending time with him.
Right.
And he's like, I need you to steal away. Yeah. Just me and you, no textbooks. So I would just tell someone, don't forget the Bible.
That's so fun.
Sounds like so simple, but it's so easy for me. I did it. I was just like, I'll get to that. I feel like I'm reading it anyway. I'm talking about you all the time. He's like, that's not my word.
Right. Yeah. I hear you. I feel you on that, because it is real easy. It's like you're spending all your time thinking about him and learning about him and making arguments on his behalf. You know, and there's been times where God has said, I didn't even ask you to go talk to that person. And that blew up in your face, you know, because of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's staying in tune with him.
I would also say, be careful of pride. Because a lot of times we get puffed up with all this information, and it becomes more about winning the battle,
right?
But then you lose the war,
right? Yes.
So it's like I'm just gonna win you over with this argument, but you lost the soul because you're so arrogant.
Do you want to know what God told me 2 years ago?
What?
Stop trying to be right and start making things right. Right?
Yeah.
Meaning, quit shoving the truth down people's throats who aren't ready to hear it yet. Quit smacking people over the head with a Bible. Live out your faith.
Yeah.
Right?
So yeah, I encourage anyone who wants to get into apologetics. It's great. It's awesome. It's really important to know what you believe and why you believe it. It changed my life. It helped me when I was having all these questions about stuff, and you get some answers.
Well, Brittany, thank you so much.
I'm a hugger.
And I just look forward to just following you and seeing where God takes you and uses you. You're amazing.
Thank you, Cathryn. And thank you for this interview. It was so awesome.
Thank you.
She's awesome. Check it out.
Bye.